In my last video, number 56, we concluded the priority sector norms, the targets and the sub-targets fixed by Reserve Bank of India for scheduled commercial banks and also for foreign banks having 20 or more branches operating in India. Today, why this video series 57, I would like to talk the basics of risk management in bank. We will try to understand the basics of risk management. What are the types of risks the bank faces, and what are the norms of Basel I, Basel II and Basel III with the help of 2 or 3 videos. Before going into the Basel norms, let us first understand what is meant by risk. Risk is existence of an uncertainty. This uncertainty may result either in financial loss or physical pain. One of the recent incident which happened world over is an example for risk. The COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic was not at all expected around the world. Now, till such time the vaccine was discovered, this COVID pandemic was considered as an uncertainty. It resulted in number of loss of lives and also lot of medical expenditure to be incurred by the public. So the COVID pandemic is an example for risk in the human being. So the risk is nothing but an uncertainty, and that uncertainty causes either physical pain or financial loss. The risk is there everywhere. Its impact is unknown. We do not know when the risk will happen. It is a probability of loss which may occur on account of uncertainties. Now, the risk cannot be eliminated. Risk cannot be avoided. Only we can take measures to share the risk. For example, a farmer who sows the seeds believes that he will get adequate rain when it is required. There will not be any drought. He will have a bumper crop, and the bumper crop will give him enough income. With that intention, a farmer sows the seeds. But unexpectedly, if a flood comes or a drought occurs, the farmer suffers a lot. In case he has taken some insurance for the crop, the riskiness is shared. So like the risk which is there everywhere, the bank also faces risk. We are all aware that banking is accepting deposit from the public and utilizing the deposits for the purpose of lending and investment. When the banks do the lending activity, it could be possible that some of the advances may become bad, which results in the erosion of profit of the bank. Similarly, when the bank makes investments either in the equity of companies or in the bonds or debentures, it is also likely to incur losses. So the risk faced by the bank can be broadly classified into two. One is a known financial risk and a financial risk. The known financial risk can further be classified into business risk and strategic risk. The business risk means a risk which bank assumes itself to remain competitive in the market. For example, suppose a bank is having certain stipulated takeover norms for taking over an advance from other bank. The bank has stipulated that the borrower who is to be taken over to our fold should be generating profit during the last 3 years. There should be a minimum sales growth of 20% year on year. The current ratio of that borrower company should not be less than 1.33:1. The debt equity ratio should be 3:1. But now the competition has increased. The bank have a higher target of advances to achieve. So in order to remain competitive or to take over more advances from other banks, bank dilutes these norms. Instead of having 3 years net profit, even if the bank borrower is having last year he generated a net profit, that is enough for me. Instead of having a 20% growth in sales, even if the company had a growth in sales of 10%, it is acceptable to me. The current ratio need not be 1.33:1. It can go down up to 1.25:1. And the debt equity ratio need not be 3:1. It can even go up to 5.5:1. So here, to remain competitive, bank themselves accept a reduced norms to remain competitive. This is what is called business risk. It can not only in the takeover of advances in developing a new product or reducing the rate of interest on some retail loans or reducing the rate of interest on corporate loans. All these cases, the business risk happens. The strategic risk is the one where the banks do not have any control. These strategic risk emanates from a shift in the economy or political compulsions. For example, the nationalization of the banks in 1969 is an example for strategic risk. No bank could stop it. Subsequent to that, the Reserve Bank of India had given licenses for private sector banks, and as a result, so many private sector banks like ICICI Bank, Axis Bank, Kotak Mahindra Bank, Yes Bank, etc. came. So the competition increased. For granting licenses, no bank could stop the RBI from granting such licenses. Again, recently, the government had come out with the merger of so many public sector banks. Similarly, licenses for new type of banking like payment banks, small finance banks have been given. So all these things are known financial risk called as strategic risk, where the banks do not have any control over these risks. Now when you come back to the financial risk, banking is accepting deposits for the purpose of lending and investment. Bank acts as a financial intermediary between the depositors and the investors. The lending activity gives rise to a risk of default, which is known as credit risk. Credit risk is a default risk. That is, the counterparty or the borrower is unable to comply with the requirement of servicing the debt. The not servicing the debt could be on account of two reasons. One, his inability to generate adequate profit to service the debt. For example, during the pandemic COVID-19, the lockdown happened, many business firms remained shut down. They couldn't generate adequate income. Naturally, they couldn't make enough profit. He is willing to service the debt, but he is unable to do it. The second thing could be the borrower is generating adequate profit, generating adequate income to service the debt, but he is unwilling to service the debt. This is intentional. Say, for example, the examples could be the Nirav Modi, the Vijay Mallya's case. They are all examples for the borrower's inability. It is the unwillingness to service the debt. So the credit risk could happen on account of the default, that is a non-payment or non-servicing the debt. The second one is the bank is also making investment in the market. The investment could be in bonds, in debentures, or in equity shares of other companies, or even in the shares of other banks. Whenever the bank makes such investment, it could be possible that the value of the investment portfolio may come down. This results in a loss to the bank. For example, the market risk is generally related to the investment portfolio. The market risk could further be classified into one. It could be an equity risk. It could be an interest rate risk. It could be an exchange rate fluctuation risk. The market risk can further be broadly classified into one is the equity risk, second one is the interest rate risk, and the third one is exchange rate fluctuation risk. Now look at the equity risk. The bank had invested, say, in 1 lakh shares of a reputed company and purchased shares by paying ₹1,000 per share. Now the bank is waiting for increase in the price of the share so that when the share price goes up to say 1,200 per share or 1,500 per share, I will sell it off and make a profit. On the contrary, due to some reason, the share value declines to ₹800 per share, which means the bank is incurring a loss of ₹200 per share. That is the market risk, which is related to the equity risk. The second one is interest rate risk. The interest rate risk is, suppose a bank is having, say, 10,000 crores of advance deposits, which are all fixed deposit or reinvestment deposit. Suppose the average deposit rate of this deposit is 6%. When these deposits were taken with a contract rate of 6%, the lending rate was, say, on an average, it was 12%. which means the bank is having a net interest income of 6%. The differential between the average lending rate and the average rate of deposits. Now these are all taken for a period of 5 years. So naturally, till such time these deposits gets matured, the bank cannot reduce the rate of interest. Now, on account of certain other reasons, suppose the lending rates falls down to 10%. When the lending rate comes down to 10%, you cannot reprice the deposit rates because they are all contracted for a period of 5 years. Now you look here, the NII of the bank had come down to say 4%. This is what is called interest rate risk, a inability to reprice the liabilities in tune with the asset. That is what is called interest rate risk, which is one of the risks which happens in market risk. The second one is the bonds, investments in the bonds. Suppose there is a fixed coupon rate bonds in which bank have invested. The return is found out based on the coupon rate. What is its present value today? Tomorrow, if the interest rate increases, naturally the bond prices will come up. On the contrary, if the interest rates declines, the bond price will go up. It is inversely proportional because the bank is making investment in bonds also. So these two are examples for the interest rate risk which bank faces. Now comes to the exchange rate fluctuation risk. This is on account of the price change between the exchange rate between two currencies. How it works, it could be the INR, the Indian rupee may appreciate, may depreciate against a different currency, say US dollars or say euro or say British pounds or say Singapore dollar or Australian dollar as the case may be. Now look at a case where the bank has discounted a usance bill say on 1/4/20. At that time, 1 USD was equal to 75 rupees INR. Now, this usance period is say up to 30th June 20. That means on 30th June 20 only, the importer is going to make payment. Now the bank has discounted it. Suppose the bill amount is say USD 10,000. Bank has given a loan at the rate of 1 USD is equal to INR 75. Now suddenly the rupee after 1 month appreciates. When rupee appreciates means the value of the INR decreases. Suppose it has become 70 per 1 USD. So naturally, when the payment comes on 30th of June, instead of getting 75 rupees per dollar, the bank will be getting 70 rupees per dollar. So such losses, this will happen in case of import also. Suppose somebody has taken an advance from a bank to import a machinery. Suppose he has taken USD say 10,000 and the rate was 1 USD is equal to INR 75. Now On the due date, when the goods arrive at the seaport, the borrower has to retire the bill. He comes to the bank and asks for payment. Suddenly you find the rupee depreciated to say INR 80 per USD. Naturally, the amount to be paid when the rupee appreciates for an import bill goes up. So there is a loss of 5 rupees per dollar. So this is a risk which the bank faces on account of interest rate fluctuations, equity rate fluctuations, or exchange rate fluctuation. The third loss risk which the bank faces is operational risk. This is mainly on account of failed people, failed technology, failed process, natural disasters, etc. For example, the core banking system fails, or some employee or some borrower commits a fraud, or a housing loan is disbursed without taking proper documentation or without creating the mortgage, or there is a wrong data entry happening in a treasury where crores and crores of data entries do happen. And it could also be a failure of an ATM, and it could also be the natural disasters, a flood occurring in the data center, an earthquake which is happening in a zone. So all these things create loss to the bank. So what we have understood so far is risk means existence of an uncertainty which results either in financial loss or physical pain. And this can only be shared. This cannot be avoided. Risk cannot be eliminated. Risk cannot be reduced. It can only be shared. In a bank, there are two types of risk. One is a non-financial risk and another one is a financial risk. Non-financial risk can be further divided into the business risk and strategic risk. Business risk occurs mainly on account of the bank themselves assumes the risk to remain competitive in the market. And strategic risk, the bank does not have any control over that. It is on account of the compulsions and the changes in the economy or due to some political compulsions. When it comes to the financial risk, bank faces three types of risk. One is the credit risk, the risk of default, the market risk, the risk on account of change in equity price, change in interest rates, or change in exchange rate fluctuations. And the third one is the operational risk, which is on account of failed people, failed process, failed system, natural disasters, etc. Now, before going to the Basel I norms, let us basically understand what is called as riskiness. The risk has to be measured. When you talk about the riskiness, it varies from situation to situation. For example, I am standing on the side of the road and I want to cross a road. There is a heavy traffic moving on the road. I want to cross and go to the other side of the lane. I look around both sides. I don't see any vehicle coming. I am crossing. That is one situation. The second situation, there is a heavy traffic on both sides. I am talking on the mobile, and talking on the mobile when there is a heavy traffic, I am crossing. So, in the second instance, the riskiness is more compared to the first one. I don't say that there is no risk in the first one also, but the riskiness varies. Similarly, when bank gives loan or when banks makes investment, the riskiness varies. For example, granting a loan to the Mukesh Ambani group is less risky compared to granting a loan to a company promoted by Anil Ambani. Granting a loan to a jute industry is more risky compared to granting a loan to a polyester yarn manufacturing unit. Similarly, granting a loan in a cash credit account is more risky compared to granting a loan in a bill purchase or bill discounting account. Granting a loan as a personal loan is more risky compared to giving a loan as a housing loan. So all these cases, the riskiness varies, and the riskiness is measured by what is known as risk weight. And the risk weights are decided by the central bank of each country as per Basel norms. The Basel Committee on Banking Supervision doesn't know the economic conditions in India or say in Singapore. So the freedom has been given to the central bank of each country to decide what should be the risk weight to be assigned to each type of a loan. Now, having discussed so far on the riskiness and the types of risk and the risk weight, let us basically understand the Basel norms. The Basel norm 1 has come, and the Basel norm 2 has come, and the Basel norm 3 has come. And the Basel 3, as shown today, is being implemented in all banks. All these Basel norms talks of only one thing. What is the minimum capital the bank should have to remain solvent or to meet the losses? How much is the capital that is required? Minimum what should be held by each bank so that if at all a loss occurs, the capital should be sufficient enough to absorb that losses. For example, you look at a case where a bank is having a deposit of say 100 crore. Or that suppose the net demand and time liability of the bank is 100 crore. Naturally, for the liquidity purpose, the bank had to keep CRR of 4% in the form of cash balances with RBI, and the bank has to invest in the government security to the extent of 18%. That means I cannot utilize the entire 100 crore which I have collected as a deposit to give loan and make investment. Now I have left with 78 crore. Suppose out of that, see 50 crore is given as loans and advances and 28 crore is used as investment. Or say I have a capital also, the shareholders fund, which is 2 crore. Now I have made an investment of 30 crore. Now here I have total source is 102 crore and I have utilized this like this. Now the question is, if a advance of 10 crore defaults, that is I have given a loan of 10 crore to a corporate out of the 50 crore and the 10 crore becomes an NPA. I am unable to recover it. Do you have the sufficient capital to absorb this loss? No, because my capital is only 2 crore, whereas my loss is 10 crore. After netting off all the, the securities, etc., assume that still the loss is 7 crore, but even then, the capital is not sufficient enough to absorb the losses. So what should be the minimum capital adequacy every bank should have to remain insolvent, to remain solvent, sorry, not insolvent, not becoming insolvent? That is what is described in all Basel norms to take care of the loss account on account of a credit, on account of a market risk, on account of an operational risk. What is the minimum capital the bank should have? And Basel 1 was implemented and there were certain deficiencies, and then they came out with the Basel 2, and in the Basel 2 also they found that there is a need for further modifying that to improve the quality of the capital the bank takes. That is why the Basel 3 norms come. We will go to each of these Basel 1, Basel 2, Basel 3 norms in the coming videos. But pending that, now we should understand what is called riskiness, what is meant by risk weight, and the Basel norms talk only about the minimum capital adequacy requirement and the quality of the capital that the every bank should have. Here, the basic fundamental method of calculating the capital adequacy is capital adequacy ratio is equal to the capital fund of the bank divided by the total risk-weighted assets. When I say total risk-weighted assets for credit, total risk-weighted assets for market risk, and the total risk-weighted assets for operational risk. Internationally, the capital adequacy is prescribed at 8%. Suppose my total risk-weighted asset is 100 and internationally the prescribed rate is 8%. That means the bank should have minimum capital fund of 8 crore to take care of the total risk-weighted assets of 100. How to find out the total risk-weighted assets we will see in the coming videos. Now you look here, but whereas in India, the prescribed capital adequacy ratio by RBI is 9%. That is 1% more than the international norms. So in this case, it should be 100 into 9 by 100. The bank should have minimum capital adequacy of 9 crore if they want to give loans of 100 crore which has got a risk-weighted assets. Right? Before going ahead to the Basel norms, I will just tell you how to calculate the risk-weighted assets in case of a credit risk. Suppose the bank is having a mortgage loan. The total mortgage loan is say 100 crore. Bank has also given some loans against the central government guarantee. That is, I will say, sovereign exposure. It is say 50 crore. And bank has also given some loan or discounted some letter of credit. Naturally, the exposure is on the bank which opened the LC. The bank debt is, say, again it is 100 crore. This is the exposure that is outstanding as on the date on the balance sheet. Now, when I work out the risk-weighted assets for the mortgage loan, as per Basel 1, the risk weight prescribed is 50%. That means for this 100 crore exposure, which I have given to a mortgage loan, the risk-weighted asset is equal to 50. For the sovereign loan of 50 crore, the risk weight prescribed is 0% because there is a central government guarantee. So the risk weight is 0. On the exposure of the bank, 100 crore, risk weight prescribed is 20%. So risk weighted asset is 20. So the total risk weighted asset is 70%. So if the bank is in India, based on Basel 1, the capital required is 70 into 9 by 100. That means the bank should have a minimum capital of 6.3 crores. This is how the capital adequacy calculation is done. That is capital adequacy ratio or capital to risk weighted assets ratio, CRAR also it is called. In India, it is prescribed at 9%. Internationally, the same continues to be at 8%. So with this, we will stop this video and we will continue with the Basel I norms and Basel II norms from my video 58 onwards. Thank you very much.